Hello and welcome to another episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today I am utterly delighted to be joined by Jamie Khurshid from Droit. I've just checked my GCSE French there and I think that is incredible pronunciation. But Jamie, good to see you. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm very good. Thanks for having me on the show. I've been been watching all the previous episodes and they're fantastic, to be honest. I'm very glad that you reached out to me for this.
Well, we call this the cherry on the cake, so I'm glad to have you on.
No
Listen, speaking no pressure, you joined a business in a pandemic, in a C-level position in the European arm of a US business. That's pressure, right?
Yeah, well, it's certainly different. It was an experience, and I have to say that the company I've joined managed it perfectly. They were exceptional at helping me through the process. Obviously, I had actually never met anyone in the company before the first time we had our first conversation. And very interesting, we went through the process. I met a lot of the senior people, the founders, and then I met the board members all over VC. And thanks to the various forms of video communication, I managed to somehow sound good enough to join the firm.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's been some businesses who've done some amazing work all the way through this in making sure those onboarding experiences are second to none. And I'm going to come on to that because I think it's a really interesting piece for people to get right, because whilst there's been people there who've done it brilliant and it sounds like your experience was great, there's also been people there who I think can probably left a little bit to be desired, which is unsurprising because it's completely new. But I'd like to come on to that. But before we do that, Droit as a company, I think that as we've probably both agreed, has gone under the radar a little bit, but it's doing some incredible things. Give us a little bit of insight as to what you've come in to do, what the company does, and what sort of attracted you to join the party.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. This before I joined Droit, it was I wasn't necessarily as clued up as I am now. Of course, coming into the interview process, I started learning about what they do, how they do it, and it was really one of those mind-blowing moments when I actually saw the demo of the platform, and that was really what made me want to join very badly. And to give you very much a high level of what we do, Droit is the pioneers of computational law. They are transforming legal and regulatory text into structured data. And they are really supporting some of the world's largest financial institutions to ensure that in real time, at the time of trade or the point of inquiry, that every single transaction is compliant with the complex global laws that are implicated in the entities that are transacting with each other and the type of transaction that's happening as well, depending on the jurisdiction, depending on the products. And to give you an idea of what that means, we're really like checking 200 legal mandates, regulatory mandates, with hundreds of attributes in sub 5 milliseconds before the trade is even done. So, and there's no upper bound or upper limit to how many trades can be checked. Of course, it's completely scalable. But they are doing thousands a second, and some of our tier 1 clients are calling on the intelligent decision process that we're providing them up to and above 10 million times a day. Which gives you an idea of really the complexity, the scale, the real-time nature of what we're doing, and the way we do it is incredible, actually. Starting out from horizon scanning of tens and thousands of regulatory updates and market microstructure changes from global regulators on an annual basis. We're really like looking at this. We're building up a multi-jurisdictional online library of digitized law, and that's really, I guess, why we talk about being a pioneer in that space, because there is actually no competition in this space. No one else has been able to do that, especially at the point of inquiry. So if you imagine, without using all the buzzwords, and trying to talk normally for a second, if you think about, if you're walking up a mountain and you know there's an edge, a cliff edge, if you don't know where that cliff edge is, you're going to take a very straight line up the mountain. You're not going to deviate. You're not going to use the full width of what you think might be there without knowing what's there, because you don't want to fall off the edge. So if you think about what Droit does, is it gives you that knowledge and insight and the confidence to know that you are going to walk exactly and use whatever you are able to use up to the edge of the cliff. and you're never going to go over the edge. And that confidence and that ability to enable firms to act right is really where I thought was astounding, especially because everything so far that I've seen, especially in my experience being a CEO of a regulatory technology firm, everything was post-trade. Everything was after the fact. If you look at surveillance systems, you look at post-trade monitoring, everything happens after the deed is done, as it were. So to be able to go in there, and we tried this before. I mean, I've tried this when I was working in banking, trying to find a way of doing things at the time of trade is very difficult. You know, the order management systems, the execution system platforms, they never really had that ability to reach out and understand exactly what was going on. And if you think about global regulations and how complex they are, a firm in the UK has all the FCA and ESMA requirements around it, just even when you model the entity. If they're transacting with a firm in the US, again, they have CFTC, SEC, they have, and even again, modeling the entity is very difficult. Then modeling the transaction, understanding the product that you're trading, even classifying, for example, a swap, and I don't want to get too detailed, but just classifying a swap is very difficult. And we do that perfectly. So now you end up having modeled entities and you understand the product perfectly. Therefore, you know exactly where in each regulation, where there is an implication on that trade and knowing what you should be doing, and if you even can do it before you do the trade. And that happens, again, as I said, sub 5 milliseconds. So it's not really getting in the way of any process, except probably Simon Dove, I'm sure, will complain about it with his business. But I thoroughly enjoyed his interview, by the way. Yeah, so that's basically what Droit does. And I think, you know, when you ask about why did I join, if you think about this, you know, we're talking about a company that started in 2012. It's very early days, and what they've built is you know, incomparable to anything else I've seen. But it's not only financial regulation that really is that we target here. Of course, you know, within finance, pre-trade eligibility is one of our strengths. We're also looking at front office controls and supervision, which we can come on to about what's happening in these times. But if you think about really what we're doing, that whole computational, that digitizing the legal text, that could be any industry. You know, that could be in any domain. So wherever there's any interaction between any entities, if there's a regulatory or legal or a rule that has to be followed, then Droit can model that and make sure that whatever that transaction is or that action is, it's done right.
And is that on the roadmap?
That is actually something that we're doing. Of course, you know, there's the 80-20 rule. 80% of my time now is going to be focusing on really monetizing the assets we have and the products we've built and the relationships we have with our tier one firms. We're looking at, you know, for me, one of the KPIs I would like to measure myself on is trying to make sure, or trying to enable every transaction to at some point have touched the Droit intelligence decision-making. So that we know that every transaction within finance is actually doing what it should be doing before it's done. So for me, that's clearly, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of conversations to be had. We're having a lot of partnership discussions at the moment with a lot of very large technology firms, really just to try and get that KPI up in terms of number of transactions that touch Droit before they're actually done. But of course, then there's the 20%, which is, as I said, you know, we're not domain specific. I think if you look at our website, you see fintech, but Droit is not a fintech firm. It's not a financial technology firm. It's a technology firm that started in finance. And really part of my role is taking us on that next part of the journey, which is to become a pure tech, a deep tech. I'm not sure exactly what the best terminology is, but just a tech firm that is operating in multiple domains. So we could look at, think about things that need very fast. The sweet spot is real-time transactions, complex global, multi-jurisdictional, cross-border laws, and a very stable, stateless, auditable, verified transaction from an infrastructure point of view. So our goal is to be the infrastructure for an emerging world of regulated interactions, because I'm sure a lot of people might agree with me, the more automated we become, then the more regulated we're going to end up becoming as well.
Absolutely.
So, and I think that part of that 20% is, you know, Droit should be the infrastructure for those regulated interactions.
So an interesting sort of challenge for you to sort of to build out.
Absolutely. I mean, it's fantastic because if you think about where my background is, I was always in finance, and I was in banking, and then I was in fintech and then reg tech. But this is the first time that I've seen a fintech company delivering value to financial services, which is actually, but then being able to translate that value into any interaction in any domain, including, let's go as far as drones and drone technology. You know, one day, imagine when there's two drones, those are the entities coming towards each other, that's the interaction, and there's a lot of law and legal text and rules around what behavior, what should be done between each drone. They should both be able to know that whatever action they take, that even if something were to go wrong, that they know that they did, that they acted in the word of the law.
Mm. Yeah, and with regards to what you're talking about there, it's, you know, coming from that reg tech background and all of the legal side of things that we're talking about with the advance of technology, this sort of puts it right into the kernel of that. It's the sweet spot of everything we're talking about right now. It's providing real solutions to probably one of the biggest issues out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly right. And I would love to bring you into the marketing team at some point.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it.
But that's a very salient point, because right now, as you can see, I'm working from home. You're in the office, which is great to see. And I'm struggling with Wi-Fi. You're not. But the other thing, that if I was a trader,
I've been there a lot, though. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Over the last 4 or 5 months, Wi-Fi has definitely been an issue at various stages.
I'm just wondering how much of the past 10 minutes you've actually caught, or have I just been stuck?
I think I've got most of it, so we're good so far. Let's not tempt fate again, though.
So the point about that working from home is very important right now, because if you are a trader and you're in an office, you obviously have your compliance officer nearby. You know, you can ask the questions. It's all real time. It's happening. You know, everyone that you need to be able to fulfill your role and do your job properly and achieve what you want to do from a business is there with you. If you are now suddenly incredibly all working from home at full speed, which I think is a fantastic achievement for the industry, but you're not physically sitting with anyone that you might need to support you. So what we've got within our infrastructure and our product set is something that is really all around trader mandates. So it's not just about regulatory text and law, it's also around the rules and policies of the firms that are using our software. So they can actually put in trader mandates, which would actually, again, at the point of trade, make sure it be checked against to make sure that traders are actually confident in knowing that what they're doing, they are permitted to do within the rules and policy of the firm. So it's almost like having a compliance officer sitting on your shoulder at the time of every trade, where you just say, can I do that? Yes, go ahead. And that's really that. Again, I go back to this confidence. Is the value we bring enables firms to act right and get that confidence that they're doing things that they should be doing before they've made the error. Then they have to go back and justify why there was no control in place for that.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's a look, I've seen for the last 2 years in particular sort of massive boom in post-trade technology. You know, we've seen so much of a buzz and a hype around that, and you know, when you're looking at the sort of compliance aspect, I think it's been so important to give that confidence and to allow, you know, confidence to spread within that community, particularly after, you know, what's happened over the last you know, decade plus in the industry. It's becoming incredibly prevalent and more and more important, and to see tech being able to adapt like this is really exciting. I can see, you know, that being one of the drivers for you to want to get into this and take on this sort of challenge. Let's rewind a little bit to the process, because I'm fascinated about all of this, and I think I said to you that you know, before we were recording, I've been hugely impressed at how firms have continued to thrive. I think it's, you know, it's almost a little bit embarrassing for companies to say they've been doing well through this sort of period, and how it's a sort of accelerated innovation and accelerated business for tech companies. But I know you guys have done really well through this, and I don't think there's anything to be embarrassed about with that. I think it's fantastic, and you know, the theme of all of this has been to take positives from the negative, and I like seeing businesses that are doing that. But before, and we'll come on to how you've achieved that in a minute as well. But I'm really, really interested in this process that you undertook, and how someone in such a senior position, away from a US centric business, is able to come into this, and how that sort of process has sort of worked for you. Because how long has it been now? 2-3 months?
It's been 9 weeks.
Yeah. So or never the easiest period, even when you've got people on the floor and you know everyone. But to come in to lead a team when you don't know people, and in a bunch with a bunch of people you haven't met before.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought that in your career at any sort of stage?
No, exactly.
So tell us about that story. I'm really interested to find out a bit more about that, Jamie.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that point about the embarrassment or the shame of doing well it is true. It's very difficult to enjoy the success that we're seeing within during these times, because of course
I understand that.
But something I learned very early on in my career in finance is that you should always act with a sense of humility, and there's no room for arrogance in this world. And as you said, I think even though we are doing very well, and I think it's good for the industry, I think it's good for the sector, it's good for finance in general, and hopefully that whatever we do to succeed will actually help being value to the economy and actually in overall. So hopefully it's not just an us versus them. I think that we're all in this together, trying to pull the right direction and get through it. So
yeah.
But it's a very good point. In terms of me joining in a senior role, it has been interesting, and I would never have expected this at all. In fact, it's funny, I was watching the Alistair Haynes interview, and I really like that too. Very, very great guy. Good for people to be able to hear him. And
good fun, really good fun. Yeah,
really. But likewise with Alistair, if I was trying to get into finance now, I would never make it. I did an environmental science degree, nothing to do with maths, or and if you look at my colleagues in my firm, I'm quite possibly the least intelligent person in the organization.
Never a bad place to be. I always try to be the same.
Exactly. I mean, they're bringing me up. Fantastic. With the MIT, PhDs, Harvard, the whole thing is fantastic. It's incredible. I'm very fortunate that I started my career when the interview processes were less stringent and competitive. But as of now, even now, joining a firm through just video conferencing, again, the technology, unbelievable. The fact that we have so many different alternatives to use. I'm not going to plug any of them individually, but I think I must use 4 or 5, 6 or 6 different video conferencing platforms in my day. Yeah, exactly. But again, that's just an example of how amazing that the technology has become. And I think we mentioned this before. It's almost, if there is a silver lining to this pandemic and this situation, is that it's happening now, when technology has been an enabler to be able to do this. Obviously, not just with Droit and its technology and the front office controls point of view or the eligibility, but more in the sense that businesses can continue to operate. Traders are able to move into their BCP environments, which now is their homes, seamlessly. I think it's incredible. I think a lot of other people on the FFTV have mentioned it, but I've also just wanted to say, I think the technology organizations have done a fantastic job. I think the technology platforms are doing a fantastic job, and I kind of owe them for being able to capitalize on this opportunity to join Droit. Without it,
you mentioned before that the BCP of yesteryear just wouldn't have been able to stand up to this sort of stuff with it.
At the risk of jeopardizing my previous career, I was involved in setting up the BCP for certain banks, and I know that in BCP processes would never have been as seamless to switch over as they were now. Again, because the applications that we were deploying were all very back-end heavy, very front-end heavy, and they all had to be scripted and deployed. And nowadays, everything's via sort of a URL to be able to access the server. So the fact that the shape of the technology and has just made it very, very feasible. If we'd had this situation 20 years ago, it probably wouldn't have worked, and you probably would have seen a lot of banks not actually being able to do what they're doing today.
Yeah, or certainly have to do it in far more perilous sort of situations, isn't it? So let's go back to this onboarding process, and it seems to have been a really well managed and well run process to get you on board. Tell us what some of the things that you think worked really well for it. What are some of the takeaways that someone watching can say, actually, this worked really well, made me feel part of the team, made me feel like I was giving a good and them to be able to say this is the right man for us as well.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I'm trying to work out exactly what it was, but to be honest, it's probably just the amount of time I spent face to face over these video conferences. So I mean, I'd imagine if you think about having an interview and being in person, there's a lot more sort of body language. There's a lot more human behavioral aspects that you can actually gather from somebody and an individual. So, which is very difficult to portray over a video camera. And I think that's probably, for anyone who's going through the process, it's very hard. I agree that to get that behavioral and that interaction and that you would have in person over just sort of over the video. So you just need to have more time. You need to have actually more time to talk about who you are. And actually, I felt that this is probably where I was very fortunate, because I did get a lot of time to talk about my philosophy, my thoughts on things not related to the job, just who am I as a person. And I think that having that opportunity to talk about who you are, how you feel about things, how you would react in certain situations, not in an interview process, not that kind of question where you go, tell me how you handle a difficult situation at work. Of course, that sounds fairly old school to me. I think, the way we should be interviewing now is we should be finding the right people, and then we should find the right job for them. A lot of the things about Droit that I've realized from day one is it's all about culture. It's the culture of the firm. It's the culture of the brand. It's what they're trying to be, what they want to be, and how they want to be perceived. And if you're not the person that would actually buy into that or be able to help advance that, then first of all, I don't think you want to be in that kind of organization, and also they don't necessarily want that type of person in their organization. So, but you can't get that across very easily, very quickly, because a lot of times you're nervous in an interview, and even if it's face to face, it's probably even more nerve-wracking. And I just feel like having that extra time to talk about who you are as a person, what your beliefs are, and how you approach life, and what some of the things that you've done in your life that you just totally irrespective of work is something that really helps the process, lets people understand who you are and whether or not you would fit into the culture. And that to me is key. So I've always been a little bit like that, trying to work within boundaries of an HR process and in a hiring process and onboarding process. I always like to know how do I interact with this person, and do I have the same, not the same, you don't all want to be the same, of course you want the diversity in there, but do I feel like they would have the same understanding?
Does it complement you and all that sort of stuff? Is it the same mission? I think that's a really, really interesting point, isn't it? Which companies, particularly in the tech space, get wrong a lot. And the companies I think that I've seen really thrive are those ones who are very, talking about previous episodes, I always think back to two businesses that really stood out on that, which is Steeleye and Finborn, two businesses there that are very, very culturally dominated and talk a lot about that sort of stuff with it. And again, that sort of comes through in a lot of tech businesses. It's right, square peg, square hole. We need to have someone who can do those tech skills, who's got that 5 years, who's got that degree, who's got that sort of ability to code this or that. And it misses a huge opportunity of saying, right, okay, who's actually going to be the person there who builds the tribe. And I think that's and I think there comes a very, very interesting point about that as well, which I think you've covered just in terms of the time it takes to actually find out about the person, because when you're looking at pair programming and all these sort of things to find the ideal developer, there's still got to be a developer there who's going to be part of the DNA and the fabric of that business, no matter how diverse it is, and probably even more so, when you are a diverse team and a diverse business, and geographically as much as anything else, with people in different houses all over the world in some instances. Tell me a little bit about that culture. What does it look like, and what does it actually mean? Because culture is always a great word, but it's very difficult to express sometimes, and what it actually means and how it's used to the benefit.
So thanks for putting me on the spot to try and express our culture.
Catch that.
I would say it's actually, I think I'm going to do a good job of this. To start off with, that Droit is different. You know, we are different. One of our things is to be unexpected. I think just in what we've delivered and what the founders and the original team managed to do from 2012 through to 2020 is phenomenal, and that is unexpected. The post-trade space was completely saturated. Everyone said that it was already been done. There's no point getting into it. And yet here we are, you know, today, a very successful company in its own right. So the culture is to be a little bit more of an adventurous, a bit more of a rebel, you know, that kind of, those, what is it, the personality traits. It's you know, there's a rebel, there's
well, I'm looking over there, and I've got some Lego bricks with the red, the yellow, the green, and the blue there, and
right.
the Myers-Briggs stuff and all that sort of thing.
Exactly. I might have plants in the office. I don't know. I can't remember. But the culture is that, you know, we are different. We are unexpected. You know, we're going to be going places that people would never expect us to be able to go. And it's kind of that kind of, we're not, there's an element of like having that cog, as you described it earlier. You know, you do need to be able to turn the wheel, but you also want to do it in a way that, you know, take it back to first principles, look at why you're turning the wheel, you know, question everything. I mean, that fits in very well with my own personal feelings about things. It's like, you know, just because we do something the way we do it now, why are we doing it that way? And I guess the whole Droit sort of culture is about questioning everything. It's about taking it back to first principles. It's about being, not being risk averse, but just understanding that, you know, we can do things differently, and we have done, and it's worked. So don't just follow the crowd. Don't be boring. You know, let's be an exciting technology company that is conquering our domain in the areas that we are market leading, and then let's move into another domain. I mean, how many times do you see a fintech firm move into other domains like insurtech, ad tech, pharma tech? It's very rare. And I think unless you have that kind of attitude that, you know, you are going places, you believe in the brand, you believe in the company, you have that sense of pride about what you're doing. I've been here 9 weeks, and I have an enormous sense of pride at the company I'm in. And I think that's exactly what you're trying to look for.
That shows, I think, as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's what you want in an organization. You want to all be confident that you're going in the right direction. You know which way you're going, and you have that visionary leader who we certainly have in terms of getting us to break the mold of being a fintech firm and just becoming this very visionary, unexpected and different, exciting technology firm.
I mean, it sounds massively exciting around that. And look, there's an interesting piece there about you coming into, you know, we touched on it before, you coming into a senior position within the business, leading a team of people who you've had a socially distant beer with, as all of it so far. Tell us a little bit about how you found that, what you've learned from that, and how you've made it work.
You know, this is a very interesting point, because having met the team for, I think it was 6 weeks, met the individuals, met my team, met the London office. I've actually met everybody one-to-one on video conference in the organization. We're a 50-odd person firm at the moment, distributed over 50 offices. And it was actually it was very similar in person to what it was over VC. And I was expecting it to be a bit awkward maybe, or a bit like stinted in our sort of relationships. But as soon as we'd got into a physical environment, it was as though there were, you know, I wasn't imagining everyone with a monitor around their head, but it was almost like that. There was no reason for us to behave or interact differently. I think, again, because the amount of time we'd spent over the videos, we'd formed relationships already. And I think that for me to build a high performing, an ultra high performing team, it is about relationships. It's about understanding and communicating and understanding how each person's an individual, and you learn about what that individual needs to be able to interact with you on a having been 2 meters apart or 1.5, I can't remember the date we did the things. Having had that interaction, it was very difficult to not almost want to get even closer and actually sort of get excited about what we're doing and all being together. And but yeah, so I think that I'm looking forward to the day when we can all actually be together in a room and, you know, sort of pushing ourselves to excel and drive forward. But it's,
and what's that look like? Is that on the agenda? Are there plans for that, or is it fluid? I mean, do you see the office being part of the agenda again for you guys?
Definitely, at some point. The question is not if, it's when. And also, given the way you guys are doing it as well, as I've learned this morning, that's quite possibly one of the solutions that we could move into. The question is, you know, do you want, obviously having a teams split between New York and London anyway, and having pods split between different regions. The question is, do you have all of the developers in together? Do you have some of the developers, some of the product team, some of the business team, you know, the management team? How do you distribute the organization to be in the office until the point when we can all be there together? It is definitely on the cards. We actually did a survey to listen to the needs and thoughts of our individuals. And we just got the survey results back yesterday. And a lot of the sentiment was that whilst working from home was effective, able to concentrate and get on and do more things, I think the performance hadn't dropped at all. It was more just the fact that sometimes people missed that interaction. It was more of a human trait rather than a work trait. So I think, you know, I think we definitely want to get people back in. We want to make sure that people feel part of a team still. But it's just about timing, and I'm not sure, you know, we're not putting any time limits on it or anything in writing just yet, but we will be there.
You get there at some stage. Yeah, it's a very difficult one to do it, and I think there's an interesting piece. I equate it a little bit to that scene in the Shawshank Redemption where he's sort of very much institutionalized. You know, it was everyone was very used to sort of 4 or 5 days in the office, and then you sort of break away from it, and it's like, oh, grumpy, we don't, you know, we do the work from home. Is it going to be completely different? And everyone gets used to that, and you realise that it can be quite productive. And all of a sudden, coming back into the office seems like this big thing for for people, because they've been reinstitutionalised over a 4-month period into this is what we do. So it becomes a much bigger thing. And actually, when it's here, we've seen, you know, this is our first week back en masse at various stages, and there's certain people who haven't been back into the office in 4 or 5 months, and there's a realization actually that this is, you know, the fear dissipates, and all of a sudden it comes back to people really enjoying being back into that sort of interaction. Exactly. I think was a big part of what we've been talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the thing I'm probably going to struggle with most is trying to work out how we manage the commute. It's the start times. I'm not sure we certainly don't want to force anyone to do anything that they're not comfortable with. And I believe that probably the biggest issue is not being in the office, it's about getting there. So we'll have to see how that plan pans out. Of course, you know, being an office split between New York and London, we can do shifts, and we'll try and work it out. But it looks like you guys have got it nailed quite nicely. So,
well, it's early days, but all I can say is if you get the early train, you can get the carriage yourself. So it's like the chairman's train for me at the moment. So I'm quite enjoying it at the desk before 7 and get my own personal train on the way, and it's not too bad. It's not too bad.
Yeah, again, the silver linings.
I could get used to it. Jamie, look, I'm conscious of the time and how long we've kept you in and how quickly all of this always goes. I say it a lot on these shows. But it sounds like some really interesting stuff that you're doing. Give us a quick highlight about what's to come, and tell us who should be talking to you and how they should get in touch with you.
That's a good one. I wasn't prepared for that. So
three ones thrown at you all at once. Catch that.
Yeah. So I think really, as I said earlier, you know, we are enabling any firm, any entity that has any interaction with another entity where there is a complex rule set that they need a real-time decision whether or not to do that trade or why they shouldn't do that trade, and an audited, verifiable sort of history based on whenever that transaction happened. Anyone in that situation, especially within finance, as you can imagine, that's all financial firms, would need to would benefit from the value we bring. I guess who should get in touch with me? It's more the fact that we're going through this exercise of rebranding now. We're going through our narratives. I think really we're trying to make sure that we have the right messages to the market. So clearly we have global tier 1 firms as customers now. We would like that to extend that to tier 2s, tier 3s, buy side. We're talking to the right partners, and we'd like to start some more partnership discussions. I think that it's going to happen. I don't necessarily think anyone needs to rush and to find my email details on this, but we'll be interesting to have conversations going forward. And again, moving into other domains is going to be interesting, but we'll see how and when that happens.
We'll tag you in on LinkedIn, and I'm sure there's going to be a fair few people wanting to find out a little bit more. It's been brilliant hearing about the business. I love hearing about people who are excited about the sort of brands they're working for. I love hearing about companies that have that sort of culture which actually means and sticks to something. And it sounds like you guys are changing the game and doing some really revolutionary stuff. So it's been brilliant talking to you. It's been great to see that sort of spring in your step, and congratulations on getting what seems like an awesome job. So Jamie, thanks for joining us. Thank you all for watching. And we'll see you soon on another episode of Fintech Focus TV. Jamie, thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.